Welcome to wisetake.com. This is CK013. You can find me on Twitter at CK_013. And yes, we are bringing you another NBA DFS podcast. It is Friday, March 3rd, 2017. Back on the solo pod today. No guest for today's show. We've got a large 10-game slate following up last night's 3-game slate. Real quick, just to recap. So we had Rick Run Good, aka Rick Gaiman from DFS On Demand. He is the founder, owner, operator of DFS On Demand, and we had him on a larger slate. I think it was 11 games that day. And he kind of showed us what he showed us was how he thinks, and that's what I was looking for. How does a guy like you approach such a large slate? And now Rick is a numbers guy, and if you go to his site, you'll see he has all kinds of tools that are based on numbers, and it's good to have that perspective. He mentioned he tries not to middle in it as much as possible. He tries to put his own personal feelings or on a situation to the side and just do what the numbers tell him. And is it going to work every single time? No, because there's this little thing called variance, and that's what makes DFS so hard. And so it's not going to work every time. But what I find is kind of like Joel Embiid always says, you got to trust your process. If your process is to follow numbers, do that every time. If your process is to follow your gut, do that every time. Because eventually those things could hit. But if you're flip-flopping your strategies back and forth, when it does hit, you might not be on the right strategy. And there's nothing worse than looking at a lineup that won and looking at it and knowing well that that's the way you construct lineups. And you very well should have come up with that lineup had you not changed your method. There's nothing worse than that. So, well, I guess there is. I guess the only thing worse than that would be losing, all their money. But either way, it's not fun. So it was awesome to have Rick on here kind of show us how he thinks, how he processes the information. Because that's the bottom line. It's all about how you process the information. We all get the same information, right? Now, obviously, some people aren't going to get the same information because they're not paying attention to the news or whatever. But I think majority of people get the same information. It's not like there's an inside source like they used to say back in the day about the Vegas sports book, right? Like, even if somebody finds out something first, you're probably going to find out about it before lock also. So it's a matter of you being aware. But it's how you interpret that information, how you adjust to that information, who you put in, who you take out. That's the beauty of it. That's what makes DFS an art form, and that's what makes it so hard to win on a consistent basis. So you got to think, even the pros that play this, even the pros who rely heavily on cash, they probably only win around 60 to 65% of the time. And that's okay, because you're still in the green at that point. Bankroll management is huge, and Fuego Steve, our guest from last night, kind of let you know he's somebody who experienced. He started off with a bankroll, and due to his recent success, his bankroll has increased. So we talked a little bit about managing that and how he's managing that. And then he said for the most part he's doing well, but he really wanted badly to enter into that 444 contest on FanDuel, and he got in, and unfortunately he rostered Kevin Durant, who got hurt, and it kind of was a wake-up call to him. Okay, slow down, maybe you're not quite ready for this level of entryship on such a large slate. Maybe on a smaller slate he could try it again and have more success. We don't know. The bottom line is you got to do what you're comfortable doing. You don't want to change your stuff up too much, because like I said, that day that you go complete change and change your whole strategy is the day your old strategy is going to come through. So there's nothing wrong with adapting. There's nothing wrong with tweaking things. If you're losing on a consistent basis, then maybe your strategy does need to be changed because apparently it doesn't work. But if you're winning, 55 to 65% of the time, and that's just not good enough, you're pushing it, because I think that there's a lot of pros out there who only hit about 60 to 65. So don't think that you have to win every single time. Because you're not going to. The bottom line is you are going to lose once in a while. There is variance in basketball too. There's variance in every sport, and you're going to have nights where you play Kevin Durant 100%, like I played him in cash the other night, and he gets hurt in the first quarter. It really doesn't do anything for you. So you got to stay tough. You got to trust the process, right? Like, you got to understand that you're not going to win every single time, but that's okay, right? So going back to what we had, Fuego Steve, and I thought it was really nice to have a guy like him. I know a lot of people like short slates. I personally am not a fan of short slates. I like to have options. Now, listen, I'm not a fan of these 10, 11, 12-game slates either. I prefer it to be, anywhere from like maybe 5 to 8 is probably my bread and butter. That's where I'm comfortable, because I like to have options, and I like to know that um, there are pivots out there. And Steve's specialty is short slates, particularly 2, 3, all the way up to 6 game slates. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun having him on the pod, and we talked about a lot of interesting things. And one thing that I think stood out, a big difference between these large slates like tonight and then the small slates, 3-game slates like yesterday, is on these smaller slates, you really, really want to trust those projections. You want the guy that's projected to score the most. And last night, that guy was Russell Westbrook, and yes, he scored the most. And he was in, I believe, most of the winning GPP lineups. And the reason that is because on a large slate, like I had mentioned before, there are pivot options. There's a lot of guys you could probably pivot to get off if you're uncomfortable with a certain player. There's probably another player around his price in a similar matchup, if not a better matchup, or maybe a slightly worse matchup that you might feel comfortable rostering. In that situation, like for instance, a guy that I commonly refer to as LeBron James. I don't always play LeBron in GPPs. Now, listen, I'm not talking about now. Now Kevin Love is out. We've seen his usage go up drastically. Let's go as if Kevin Love is still playing, right? So when I look at a guy like LeBron, who's typically in the 10s, right? He needs to hit 50 just to get 5x if he's 10,000. So it's not on a short slate. I'm all over LeBron because most likely the other small forwards on that slate are not going to come near the points he puts up. But if we're looking at a large slate, there might be like an Andrew Wiggins or somebody else at that position that I can get a discount and still get similar upside with that player. Now, if LeBron goes for 60, but I played Wiggins at 2K cheaper and he put up 50 or 55, I can live with that. I'm okay with that because I saved that $2,000 that I could spend elsewhere who may have bailed me out of a certain situation. Or I was able to avoid a certain punt play that I was uncomfortable with because I had that extra $2,000. So it is very different playing players on different slates. And I thought it was really interesting because I completely agree with Fuego Steve on the fact that on short slates, you kind of have to trust the projections a little bit more. You trust the numbers a little bit more because your options are limited. And last night we saw Westbrook was, I think, over 13K on DraftKings. The next closest guy to him, I think, was Lillard at 8.8. That's a huge difference in price. And it was justified because we kind of knew, yeah, Curry put up 46. I'm not really sure what Lillard ended up with. I want to check real quick. I got the DK Live app over here on my phone. So Westbrook had 66. Kemba Walker had 48. Damian Lillard had 48. And Curry had 47. So those were the 3 other top point guards of the night. Obviously, Kemba scored just as much as Lillard. He was $500 cheaper. I think he was 83. I'm not positive on that. I'm pretty sure. Anyway, so last night was a situation where Westbrook was far and above the highest projected point guard. And you could see the next closest point guard that scored to him, he got 66 DraftKings points, 48. There's your price difference. There's what you paid for. Now, if you had more options, not just at point guard, but if you had more options in general, maybe it would have made more sense to fade Westbrook so that you can afford some other big stud. We had Jimmy Butler, but Jimmy Butler was on a discount. He was 8.9. Had it been LeBron James, people would have had to think, I may not be able to afford LeBron if I play Westbrook. Now, if I play if I play Damian Lillard, he has a shot to hit a similar upside as Westbrook, but then I can still afford LeBron James, who at the time, maybe his projection was far and away above all the other small forwards. So, there's a lot of things you got to take into account. There's a lot of things you got to think about. And I'm hoping that you guys enjoyed having those guests on there. I really had a great time talking DFS. I love talking DFS anyway. So you tell me to do it on the camera, on a microphone. Absolutely, I'm in. And we had a blast, and I hope you guys enjoyed the show. So we're going to move on to today's podcast. It's, like I said, 11 games. Move on to today's podcast. We're going to move on to today's slate of games. Starting off with the injuries, as we always do. Dunleavy is expected to miss with an ankle against Cleveland, so I guess there might not be any revenge opportunity. That's a joke. I wouldn't play Dunleavy regardless. Rodney Magruder is questionable with his quad against Orlando. Willie Reed is questionable with a calf against Orlando, I should say. And Dion Waiters is questionable with an ankle at Orlando. Apparently Hassan Whiteside is also a game-time decision with an illness at Orlando. So there we go. Hey, let's get four guys from Miami that are on the injury report that do play decent roles. At least, Waiters and Whiteside they play huge roles on their team. So if Whiteside does play, I think if Willie Reed is out, Whiteside becomes another phenomenal play. He did pretty good last time. I know that last time they went out, I think we had Rick on the show, and Rick was pretty high on Whiteside. He did well. I think he had 43 DraftKings points. I don't think that he did as well as some of us were expecting, but he did do well. I'll take 43 from Whiteside because I think his price was a little lower. So let me see. Let me pull up the old DraftKings because I'm not exactly sure what his price is today. Okay, he's 8-1. So if he's 8-1, you're hoping he can get you about 45 to 50 on the low end. And he has a phenomenal matchup against Orlando. They're one of the worst ranked teams against centers, according to DVP, of course. And I definitely think that I think you could certainly try to go back to the well. I think I don't see why not. Obviously, if Waiters doesn't play, I think that's going to put a lot more on Whiteside and Dragic both. So I think that's something that we would have to consider there. And I mean, Rodney McGruder, if he doesn't play and Waiters does play, I think that's better for Waiters, to be honest. There's still some guys that are healthy that could bump him around a little bit, but it's worth considering. Moving on, C.J. Watson is a game-time decision with his Achilles at home against Miami. Hernan Gomez is doubtful with an ankle at Philly. Now, without Hernan Gomez, we all, I think everybody, including myself, ran over to play Kyle O'Quinn. And, that was a situation where I listened to some other smart people who talked about the situation and why they faded him in GPPs. Now, in cash games, I don't think there was any real reason to fade him because it seemed like everybody else was going to be on him. So it's okay if you take him because everybody else is going to have him. Now, in GPPs, it was the perfect fade. And the reason it's the perfect fade is because anytime that you have a guy that's not a superstar, right, not a stud, and he has an opportunity and he's going to be ridiculously high owned, like overly owned, a guy like him should never be owned that high in tournaments, then it makes perfect sense to fade him because the potential for bust is there. Now, if Russell Westbrook is 70-80% owned, you still may not be able to justify fading him. Just because the chances that he busts are so small that you're taking a bigger risk hoping he busts. Whereas a guy like Kyle O'Quinn, he's not really proven in the league. He's not some superstar. And if you look at his game logs, you saw the Knicks don't like to play him heavy minutes for whatever reason. So, and obviously with Porzingis back, they do like to play Porzingis at the 5. And when they have to. And so Kyle O'Quinn, that was a situation where why not fade the guy in tournaments, I'm talking about. And in cash games, like I said, I played him. You kind of have to play him in cash just because everybody else is going to. And that's a way to keep up with the field. He was cheap enough to free up some of your salaries. And he got 20 DraftKings points. He didn't kill anybody. But in tournaments, yeah, you weren't going to win with Kyle O'Quinn in your lineup. Not with 20 DraftKings points. Not at 5-2. Maybe if he was 3K and you got 20 from him, maybe you could do something with that. But he was 5-2 and you got 20 DraftKings. He didn't even go 5x. So he's not gonna really help you in a large GPP like that where there's a lot of scoring that's required. So that's a situation where we got to learn from those kind of situations. When you see a guy like this that's gonna be making chalk. Now listen, the price is everything. Like I said, if he was 3K the minimum, then absolutely you want to play him because even if he gets 15, he hit 5x for you. But when a guy is in the 5s and he has to get at least 20 DraftKings points, you have to look in terms of floor and upside, right? And Kyle O'Quinn, he probably hit his floor for a guy that was starting. But what was his upside that night? The upside could be there. We've seen him do some stuff, but the ownership doesn't justify it. So basically what I'm trying to say, and I know I'm wording it weird, but basically what I'm trying to say is if you see merit in fading a guy, if you look at a guy and you see this guy is not bust-proof, why is 50-60% of the field on this guy? Then maybe you should fade him in tournaments yourself. Is it going to work every single time? No. There's been numerous situations where I've tried that, and it kind of bit me in the butt. I didn't play a certain guy that I knew was starting because I thought, hey, there's a good chance this guy could bust. And he didn't, and he went off. And that happens sometimes. But that's a leverage opportunity. That's a perfect opportunity to differentiate yourself from a good 30-40% of the field right there. So anyway, moving on. Hernan Gomez is out again. O'Quinn's an option. I don't think people are going to be rushing to play O'Quinn, and the matchup is juicy against Jahlil Okafor. We saw Okafor. There was some highlights. I don't know if you guys saw it of him playing defense against somebody the other day, and I mean, if you want to call it, he was kind of just standing there, and he just allowed. I think it was Miami. And he just allowed an offensive rebound, allowed Whiteside to dump it in. He really didn't play any defense. So I think O'Quinn is in play today. Again, we don't know what minutes he's looking at. It's a little scary. Let me check and see what his price is to see if that makes things any better or worse. He's 56. His price went up somehow. So his price went up even though he only played 19 minutes in his start. Now, the thing with O'Quinn is he does have the upside. That's what we're talking about. Last time he played 25 minutes against Philly, and he got 36.25 DraftKings points. See, I would take that. He was 4,300 that day. Absolutely phenomenal. If he gives you that today, that's good. But we don't know for sure if he can give you that. And to be honest, rather than playing a guy like O'Quinn in cash, I think I would rather play a guy like Okafor because Okafor is actually cheaper than O'Quinn. Yeah, Okafor is actually cheaper than O'Quinn. I think Okafor is like 4,900. Anyway, we'll touch on that when we go position by position. Kyle Lowry's out. I think DeRozan remains a solid play, especially for cash. Michael Beasley is expected to be out with a knee against the Clippers. Wesley Matthews is questionable with a hip against Memphis. Victor Oladipo is questionable with his back against Phoenix. Rodney Hood is questionable with a knee against Brooklyn. Tony Parker questionable with his quad against New Orleans. And Gerald Green is questionable with a heel against the Lakers. Thomas Robinson questionable with illness against Boston. So those are the injuries. We touched on them real quick. And now I want to go a little bit position by position and just kind of talk about some of these guys. So we're starting with the point guards. Russell Westbrook is 13-1. Excuse me. He's 13-1 today. He's on the back end of a back-to-back. He crushed last night. I don't see any reason he wouldn't crush tonight against a horrible defensive team in Phoenix. He's 13-1. There's a lot of options today. If enough value opens up, then I would imagine his ownership would increase because I'm sure people are going to want to play him. But on a night like tonight, point guard seems, at least from the naked eye, point guard seems somewhat loaded today. John Wall is 9-7. I think that's crazy. I was asked on Wise Take Live this past Wednesday, I was asked what I felt about the Washington team, and it was the day after they had just upset Golden State. And I had mentioned that I am staying away from pretty much all the Washington guys just because they just played an emotional game. They got so up and high playing Golden State and upsetting Golden State, even though Kevin Durant went down, that I was worried they were going to come out flat. And I was comfortable with that, and they did. In my opinion, anyway, they came out flat. John Wall had 39 DraftKings points. His price was 10-2. And he went 4 for 12 from the field, 0 for 2 from three. After that, he doesn't really shoot through. He did have 13 assists, but just all in all, it wasn't the kind of John Wall game that you want, right? He just didn't really do it for us. I don't understand why his price dropped so drastically. Now, they're playing Toronto again. They just played Toronto, so maybe they're factoring, okay, well, they just played Toronto and he did horrible. It was a completely different situation. First of all, it was on the road. It was on the back end of a back-to-back, and it was after they just played a huge game. If you don't think they want a little bit if you don't think they want a little bit of redemption, and I don't even know if they won the game or not. I'm talking in terms of the players. John Wall knows that wasn't the kind of John Wall game that he wants to have. John Wall wants to go out there and mash. He wants to go out there and crush, and he didn't do that. So I think John Wall's in an interesting bounce-back spot. And at 9-7, I think the price is a lot more attractive. Don't get me wrong. Do I still think that's a little too expensive for a guy like Wall? I think it could be. But we know he has immense upside. He's capable of putting up 60. And even if he puts up 50 for you at 9-7, which I don't think would be too hard for him in this situation, I think he'd be happy with that. So I think Wall is very interesting. I skipped over Giannis against the Clippers. Giannis has been struggling. He's burned me twice. He burned me against Denver the other day. Luckily for me, I did have a lot of shares of Chris Middleton, who did phenomenal. But yeah, Giannis, I don't know. Something's funny with him. I'm a little concerned about this matchup. Now, he could very well bounce back here. You always have to be on the lookout when a star player is struggling, because when they break out, they typically break out huge. So if you're playing multiple lineups, you might want to have at least a little bit exposure to Giannis just in case. But on paper, this does not look like a good matchup for him. Blake Griffin's back, and Blake Griffin is obviously playing. DeAndre Jordan's playing. CP3's back, so I think there's going to be the rim protection is certainly there with DeAndre Jordan and Blake Griffin together. So I'm a little concerned at that. But I also feel like if Milwaukee's going to stay relevant in this game, they're going to really need Giannis to be the guy to keep them together. Because I don't know how much they can count on Chris Middleton to go out and do what he did in limited minutes. So Giannis is interesting. IT2 at 9-3. His price is okay. His price is a little steep for me, especially with Bradley back. Some of the guys are healthy. Now, he's still mashing. Against Cleveland, he had 46.5 DraftKings points. I had a good amount of exposure to him in GPPs. So he's still doing his thing. The Lakers are a dream matchup, obviously, for him. He is on the road. There is a little bit of a risk for a blowout, although I don't know. I don't think Boston will blow them out all the way on the West Coast. It's typically tougher for these East Coast teams to go back there and play. So I think Isaiah Thomas is certainly interesting at 9-3. Chris Paul at 9K, definitely a viable option. He's the only Clipper that really didn't dud out too bad against Houston the other night. And CP3, you know what you're getting. He's 9K. He got 41 DraftKings points. So if for 5x, you're looking at 45 DraftKings points. So if you think he could put up over 50, then sure, trust him. I think that's too much for me to pay in a cash game on a night like tonight. But I'm not sure. I haven't really looked at the entire slate in depth. Eric Bledsoe 8-5 against Oklahoma City. It's a back-to-back for Phoenix as well. They played last night, and Bledsoe did okay. He had a decent game. I love targeting guys against Westbrook, and Bledsoe at 8-5 is interesting, but there are a lot of options, so I can't really say that he's a guy that I'm going to completely lock in, especially when you got Devin Booker on the other side with nobody really to cover him either. So it makes it a little bit tough. I guess they could put Roberson on Booker, which would kind of funnel everything to Bledsoe. So Bledsoe is certainly interesting. Kyrie Irving at 8-4 against Atlanta. Fantastic matchup. His minutes, though, they do have Darren Williams now. Now, look, against Chicago, Kyrie played 35 minutes. Against Milwaukee, he played 37. And against Boston, he only played 32. Now, he did struggle a little bit early on, but remember, they had Darren Williams, and they gave him some run a little bit. So now they have a viable and actual backup point guard. I don't know if Kyrie's going to continue to see mega minutes. So for that reason, I would say put Kyrie in your GPPs only, but I definitely would not ignore him. I'm not a big fan of Conley today. I just don't like this game. Memphis and Dallas. It's just low total, slow pace. I'm just not crazy about it. And I think some people might have been fooled by the other night when Memphis put up a ridiculous amount of points. For some reason, they played fast. They played at Phoenix's pace, and they crushed. I don't think that's going to continue, especially not against Dallas. I think Goran Dragic at 7-1 is very interesting if Waiters is out. Now, at 7-1, his price is attractive in general. He only played 23 minutes against Miami, but I think it was because that game was a blowout for most of the game. But if you look back, even before that, his minutes have been kind of down. He played 37 against Dallas, but against Indiana, he only played 28. Against Atlanta, he played 29. So his minutes have been a little suspect. Now, despite not playing the minutes, his production has still been there. So other than against Philly, his production has been there. If he gets 28 minutes, he can still put up 33, 34, 35 DraftKings points, which isn't so bad. I mean, at 7-1 for 5X, you're looking for 30. Well, he's 7-1, so you're looking for 37, 38 roughly. If he gives you 40, you'd be happy. If he gets 30, 31, 32 minutes, I don't think 40 is going to be too hard for him at all against Orlando. So I think he's certainly in play. Now, if we find out that Dion Waiters isn't playing, I doubt it. I think he's going to play. But if Dion Waiters, for any reason, doesn't play, I think Dragic becomes a phenomenal play at 7-1. Drew Holiday at 6-9 against San Antonio. I'm not crazy about targeting guys against San Antonio. There's only one guy that I might be interested in. We'll talk about him a little later. D'Angelo Russell at 6-9 against Boston. I love targeting point guards against IT2. I say that every week. And at 6'9", he's interesting. I wouldn't trust him in cash because the rotation has been sketchy. And his performance in general has been a little sketchy. But certainly a GPP option. George Hill, 6'3", against Brooklyn. I mean, phenomenal matchup. You got to worry about the blowout here. Utah's been playing pretty well, especially at home. And Brooklyn is pretty bad. They are coming off a win, too. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them get smashed. But at 6'3", George Hill is certainly in play. Schroeder at 6'2". They're going to need Schroeder to step it up against Kyrie if they have a shot to win this. They're going to need Schroeder to play hard against LeBron and company. So I think he's in play. That's the thing about point guard, right? I've gone down this list, and I think there's literally, except for Connolly, I think everybody I've mentioned is in play. And that's the beauty of point guard. So maybe this is a slate where you want to load up on point guards. I mean, I always try to load up on point guards. But anyway. Derrick Rose is 6K against Philly. I don't mind him at 6K because he only needs really 30 to go 5X. So in cash games, I think he's a viable option. We've seen his minutes have been way up with Brandon Jennings gone now because they have Ron Baker as his backup and Chasen Randall, I think his name is. And he's only playing 2, 4, 5, and he's playing garbage time minutes. Baker is really the backup, and I know that they don't feel too comfortable running the rookie Baker out there for too long. My brother requested that I call him Ron Burgundy Baker, so there you go, B. And so I think Rose is interesting in cash games. His price came down. He's 6K. In his last 2 contests, he did score over 30 DraftKings points. So in cash games, I'm kind of looking for that. I'm thinking his floor here is probably around 25 against Philly, and that's not going to kill you in your cash games, even though it's not quite 5X. But I do think that he could do some damage here. So I do like Rose at 6K for cash. But if something else opens up, if value opens up or somebody gets hurt, it's fine. It's just when I look at Rose and I see he has no viable backup and he's going to get minutes, it's hard not to like him. What scares me a little bit is what I've been hearing about him in the media. I've heard that he's been very vocal about not liking the triangle. And most recently they asked him again about it and he said, what can I do about it? That's not exactly a motivating answer you want to hear from your quote-unquote star point guard. But anyway, I think he's in play. Brogdon is 5'6". Elf on the shelf is 5'5". This isn't a very good matchup, but one of these days, Elf is going to go off. Against Atlanta, he kind of did. He only played 28 minutes against Atlanta, and he got 47.25 DraftKings points. Elf is the epitome of a GPP play. This is a rough matchup for him, I'll admit that, but he's the epitome of a GPP play. I'm not recommending him today against Dragic by any means, but just felt like we had to kind of mention him real quick. Moving on to shooting guard. My guy here is DeMar DeRozan at 8'9". I think he bounces back in a big way today. I really like DeRozan. Obviously, Seth Curry's been crushing, but his matchup is tougher. Shooting guard's ugly today. I'll leave you with that. Devin Booker is 6'7", but I think Roberson might cover him. DeRozan is my favorite guy at the position today. I'm not going to go too in-depth because we are running out of time, but I do like DeRozan. I think DeRozan is going to bounce back. Small forward, LeBron obviously in a monster spot, Giannis, Kawhi, all these guys are in great spots. I think it's okay to go back to Covington, and I'm not dying to play Covington, but I think it's okay to go back. I think his minutes go back up. I think that we saw against Miami, he only played 26 minutes. He still got 30.25 DraftKings points. Now, that wasn't enough for a 7.5 salary, but he's down to 7.2 now. He's against a bad defensive team, and he's at home, so I do like Covington here. Let's see. Harry Barnes is in a tough matchup. Warren did pretty good yesterday. Don't know. He's up and down. The guy my favorite play, I don't know if I could trust him in cash. I want to. I might. But Otto Porter is only 5'6". I don't know why his price dropped so significantly. He played 19 minutes against Toronto and scored 5.75 DraftKings points. That just kind of seemed like a fluke to me, like he was a little off after that big game against Golden State. I'm going right back to the well at 5,600. I mean, you're telling me this guy basically, if he scores 30 DraftKings points, then we're good. He's a phenomenal three-point shooter against a team that struggles against three-point shooters. So I think people are going to be off of Porter because of the last performance. They're going to say, well, last time he played Toronto, he didn't do anything. But I love Otto Porter today at 5'6". I just don't know if I could trust him in cash. Moving on to power forward, obviously you got Anthony Davis. Boogie is the guy that I like against the Spurs. He's 9'2". The projections are going to love this guy because of that. But we have to remember he's on a new team. He's sharing the usage with Drew Holiday and mostly Anthony Davis. He's coming back from suspension. He's going to be out on a mission to prove. So in GPPs, I think Boogie is definitely an awesome play. I love Blake Griffin at 9'1". He's coming off a terrible outing. You know, a guy like Griffin is going to bounce back. He gets mega minutes. I love Griffin today against Milwaukee. I like Melo. I think he's okay. I'm not crazy about him, but at 7.5, I think it's interesting. They lowered his price now that Porzingis back, so I think he's certainly in play. I love Sarge today. Love the guy. He's 7,400. His price came back down just a little bit, and he's coming off a game where he got 20 DraftKings points. That was a tough matchup, and I've been telling people, Miami, don't play power forwards against Miami. I know they don't have a guy down there that seems so dominant, but for some reason, guys just struggle against them. So I think against the Knicks, against Porzingis, against whoever they put in him, I think Sarge is going to bounce back. So I love Sarge today at 72. Millsap at 7K. His price is only 7K. I think that's a steal for a guy like him. So I definitely think he's in play today. LaMarcus Aldridge is only 6'1", and they're going to need him to bang it out with Boogie and AD. So I think he's also in play today. His performance has been struggling, but I certainly think he's in play. But like I said, Blake Griffin, Sarge, Melo, those are some of my favorite small forward / power forward guys today. I love Otto Porter for value. Sarge is center eligible. You can play him there, but there are some decent centers. Talked about Whiteside at 8'1". Gasol at 7'9" is interesting. It's a pace down spot, but it's still interesting. Rudy Gobert at 7'3" in a pace up spot. I don't see a scenario where Rudy Gobert doesn't smash today. Vooch at 7'2" is interesting. He's coming off a bad performance, but he's playing against... Remember, Whiteside's a terrible defender. You got to remember that. KP6, Porzingis is 6'6". He's center eligible today, so he's interesting. Dwight Howard at 6'5". There's a lot of interesting centers. Al Horford 6'2" against the Lakers. Not a big fan of Brolo today against what's his name, but Kyle O'Quinn. I think that in GPPs you might want to go back to him. This could be a game where he goes off. I think people will be off now that they've seen his minutes are not guaranteed. Obviously, Cantor, Adams, they should be able to bully the young front court. I love Jahlil Okafor today at 4.9. I think Holmes and Okafor both are in play. They're only $100 different. That's why I prefer Okafor, because he is the guy. So why would I pay $100 less for the backup? Yeah, okay, last time I played Holmes in the last contest, and he got a lot of run that was great. But that was just one contest in a situation where they were getting blown out. They decided not to put Okafor back in because they were getting destroyed. So I think Okafor gets his run. The Knicks are terrible against centers. I really like Okafor today at 4.9. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the position-by-position breakdown. If you're not a member of wisestake.com, please go to wisestake.com and sign up now. Membership is free. You get access to our free NBA raw projections, cheat sheets. We have the odds charts, all kinds of tools for you for free. We got our forums on there. We're trying to get the forums going. I'm going to try to open up a chat feature at some point soon. Maybe get some guests in there to help you guys out a little bit. But that's it. Anyway, if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. I'd love to hear some feedback. Let me know if there's any guests that you think would be interesting to come on the show. Anybody you want to hear, or if you enjoyed one of the other guests in the past and you want me to bring them back, let me know, and I'll do my best to cater to you. If you're listening on Podbean, please give us a follow, leave us some reviews. If you're listening on iTunes, rate us, review us, subscribe to the channel. We really appreciate it. Anyway, guys, this is the last show of the week. We're off for the weekend. We'll be back on Monday with a new pod for you. Baseball season's right around the corner, and we're going to have to adjust that in because I do love me some baseball. So anyway, guys, really appreciate you guys watching as always. Hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions or at the forums. That'd be the preferred method. As always, guys, good luck.